Welcome. This is the 53rd event of Spread.
Yeah.
So Spread, to my viewers online, Spread is supporting peer respect, education, and discourse. Likes to get together and share our little perspectives, things that we learn as we're going through this thing called life, and just do a peer learning, peer discourse. Today we have an exciting topic: corporate governance. Right, Carmen's been at institutional shareholder services,
Corporate side, yes.
corporate side, for the last 2 years or so. So she does this day in and day out, and she is the expert on how to evaluate how companies are governed and ran. So I'll leave it at that. Without further ado, here's Carmen.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming on such an early morning day. Enron, for those of you who don't know what Enron is, they used to be really big. They were one of the largest sellers of natural gas in early 1990s. And so you can see that their stock price over on the left side was in the $9 range. And then by the time 2002 hit, they're pretty much at zero, bankrupt. And what happened was that they had a lot of money from selling natural gas, and they wanted to grow their company, so they started to diversify their strategy, and they got into other types of energy, such as gas pipelines, electricity plants, paper plants, water plants. They went to all kinds of different products. In order to further their profits, they went into a lot of debt, but they didn't publicly tell anyone that they were going into a lot of debt. They made it look like that they were having a lot of growth, that they were making a lot of profit, and a lot of people invested in them. But then they also invested into broadband services and digital media, the dot-com era. And then by the 2000s, you guys heard of the dot-com boom, or I guess bust. And basically, they went bankrupt. And people started looking into what happened. How can such a big company go from $90 to zero? And what they found was that the company had a lot of mismanagement, and their financial statements were very misleading. And so how they were reporting their assets, they were valuing their assets at what they thought was the future price of the asset, instead of the current day price of the asset that they had. So a lot of people thought, oh yeah, like their financial statements look good, we'll invest in them. And because of that, they got into a lot of debt, and then the investors who invested their money into the company lost all their money. And so I bring this example up because this is an example of bad corporate governance. When people ask me what is corporate governance, it's hard to explain. And so I like to tell this story in order to have an example. You can see that a bad corporate governance, it could involve misconduct, criminal behavior, fraud, falsifying records, conflict of interest. And so when your company isn't well run, this is what could happen. So for an investor, it's important to understand corporate governance of a company, and also how to assess and evaluate whether or not the risk that you're willing to take. If you're okay with a lot of risk, fine. Like, you can invest your money into a more risky company. But if you're a less risky person, this is something to consider when you're pouring like $10,000 into a company. Alright, so even if you don't invest in individual stocks, if you don't pick individual stocks as an investment, how come it's important to learn about corporate governance? So here is companies put into lobbying the government to influence legislation so that it benefits companies. And so, for example, Google, they're known for their extensive lobbying on antitrust, data privacy, immigration reform, intellectual property rights. Amazon, they're known for lobbying into issues such as labor rights, taxes, government procurement. AT&T, they're known for lobbying their money into telecommunications policy, net neutrality, spectrum allocation. So behind the scenes, companies have a lot of influence into how society is ran, and we don't really see that, but we can definitely feel it. And so even if you don't invest in individual stocks, I think it's also important to learn how to evaluate a company and to see whether or not they're being well run or not. Any questions? No, pause it.
Just a random question for Enron. Do you know if like that was like intentional like lying and stuff, or was it just like incompetence from like the people writing all the?
It was intentional.
Okay.
In the fact that once management and executives, they knew what was going on, and they didn't put a stop to it. So at some point, they found out what was happening, but they're like, it's okay, it's gonna work itself out. But obviously, it didn't work itself out.
Did anyone go to jail?
Yes,
A lot of people or just a few people?
I know at least 3 people, 2 executives. One got a heart attack before they got into jail. The other one was in there for like 12 or 15 years. And then I don't know about the other one.
I'm surprised. Usually rich people don't go to jail.
Yeah, like were they actually the, or were they?
Yeah,
Or
it
like
was like the CEO and the CFO.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then a director.
Here's a seat.
Was it a real heart attack or was it a Harvey
Oh.
Epstein?
You faked his death, yeah.
I don't know. But something happened and he got a heart attack.
I'm not surprised that Amazon's putting money into labor rights.
Oh yeah.
No, against labor rights.
Oh,
Oh.
they're against labor rights?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want the workers to keep
Oh.
working.
Organizing.
Like
Yeah.
minimum wage.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that part makes more sense.
Yeah. Okay. What is corporate governance? Well, at the basic, if we look at the structure of a company, we have the employees at the bottom, management, and then CFO, CEO, they report to the CEO. The CEO reports to the board of directors, and then the board of directors reports to the shareholders, which is us. If you own a stock, you are a shareholder, and you are an owner of a company. And so the main responsibilities of a board of directors, they're there to oversee the direction of the company. They decide who to hire in terms of like the CEO or executives. They determine how much pay the executives get compensated. They oversee the risks, and really their duty is to faithfully represent shareholders and make sure that the company is going in the right direction and that they're creating long-term value for the shareholders. So, given this structure, how do you determine whether a company has good corporate governance or not? Well, today we're going to dive into the ABCs. A really good acronym. This stands for Audit and Risk, Board Structure, Executive Compensation, and Shareholder Rights. So this is easy to remember, and I really like this acronym. Okay, so Audit and Risk. Audit and Risk is studying what systems and policies are in place at the company in order to make sure that they're performing well, that we have all these processes in place to avoid corruption and stuff, and also while balancing the needs of its shareholders. Board structure, this is looking at the makeup of the board of directors. So the board of directors, they have an essential role in the company. So it's really important to get to know, like, okay, who's at the top making all these decisions? Do they have the proper skills and knowledge to run the company? Are they independent, and are they working in the company's best interest? And then we have executive compensation. This is looking at how much executives are getting paid. And this part is really important because some executives get paid a lot of money, like 25 million. And in my head, I'm like, 25 million? That sounds really excessive, but once you're in the S&P 500 companies, like, they just get paid a lot. So it's really important to know and understand how the company is using all the money that investors are giving them, right? If we're investing in the company and they use our money to pay, or they use most of the money to pay executives, that sounds like it's a problem. And then finally, we have shareholder rights. As a owner of the company, so if you own one stock of the company, you are a shareholder. And what rights do you have as a shareholder? How do shareholders express their dissatisfaction or satisfaction of the company? All right, I'm gonna pause here. Any questions? All right, so now, before we go into like each of these categories, let's talk about the tools that the public has access to in order to evaluate how companies are run. Okay, so the first resource we have is the SEC.gov website, and basically this is the Securities and Exchange Commission. They're in charge of all the regulatory stuff related to public companies, and you'll see that the government requires companies to file certain information on an annual basis, quarterly basis, so it's all required information. Some companies go above and beyond, which is nice, so they give you more information than what is required. And then some companies just do the bare minimum, and they don't want to disclose anything. So you will find a spectrum of disclosures in this website. Does anyone want to give me a public company that you guys want to look at?
Wasn't there one in the news this past couple weeks? Shit.
What was it related to?
What kind of news?
I'm dying.
Good news, right?
I was in bed for like 14 hours. I don't remember.
Boeing? Is it Boeing?
Oh, Boeing, yeah.
Sure, yeah, let's do Boeing.
Okay. Does anyone know the ticker for Boeing?
They just put in Boeing.
I don't know, but we can just put in Boeing. Alright, so you'll see a list of all public companies. It's probably the first one, Boeing. We see company information, so the basics like, oh, what's their business address? And when is their fiscal year end? Where are they incorporated? So most companies are incorporated in Delaware because the Delaware has good company-friendly laws over there. And then we can see what industry, so aircraft. All right. And then here on the left side, the latest filings. So these are the latest filings that the company uploaded onto the website pertaining to current reports. So any newsworthy things that investors should know, SEC, the government, will require companies to report it because as an investor, we need to know what's going on. So for example, current reports could include something like the departure of a director or an executive. That's pretty big. If you invest in a company because you trust its leaders, it's important to know like if they're leaving or not. Other stuff related related to financial statements are reported here, etc. So this is all like current news. Okay. The second category that companies file are annual reports and quarterly reports. So on a yearly basis, companies are required to disclose their financial statements. So you can go into here, into this website, and pull up their financial statements and actually look at a public company's profits and statement of income. Let's see, where is it? Financial statements and supplementary data, right here. The other things that an annual report has is an overview of its business performance, cybersecurity, legal proceedings. So if they're in a lawsuit, you'll probably find it over here. And then,
Oh, where are the unresolved staff comments? What does unresolved mean in this context?
where?
The third item.
Item
1B.
1B, unresolved staff comments. I have no clue.
Not applicable.
Not applicable.
Oh,
Yeah.
so just not. Oh.
They
They don't know where to put it.
Yeah,
this
so
is
I'm
like
assuming
template.
they don't have anything, so
Everything's resolved.
yeah, everything
Oh,
is
okay.
resolved, so
Oh, well,
they don't need to put anything.
there's nothing wrong at Boeing, guys.
Yeah, what are the risk factors? What are they looking at? Or legal proceedings? Like what lawsuits are they involved in?
Well, we can find out.
There's not enough paper in the universe. No, I'm just kidding.
Legal proceedings. Currently, we are involved in a number of legal proceedings. For a discussion of contingencies related to legal proceedings, see note 21, related to our financial statements. So we can dive deep here, but sometimes it takes a while to actually find what you're looking for. But I think the bulk of it is for those who know how to read financial statements. You can actually see all of their cash flows and use of equity and taxes and all of that, and debt and stuff.
Ooh, note 21, legal proceedings.
Note 21.
You want the T.
Legal proceedings.
Various legal proceedings. What?
You're so vague.
Various. What does that mean?
Well, here we have a 2018 accident.
Yeah. Yep.
They entered into an agreement. There was also one with Embraer. Yeah. Okay, so a company has to file their 10K, and 10Q is quarterly. I don't know why they use K and Q. Q, that makes sense, it's quarterly. Q, K, I don't know why. I don't know, someone tell me.
Oh, you're giving a presentation.
Yeah.
Someone tell her.
Unfortunately, I don't know everything. Okay, so the next is what we call a proxy statement, and companies are required to annually hold a proxy meeting, an annual meeting for its shareholders. So this is basically for us. If we own a stock of Boeing, we're entitled to vote. We can vote at their shareholder meetings, and companies have standard voting items that they do every year, and then sometimes shareholders will propose a proposal, and then it'll be voted on at the annual meeting. So if we take a look at Boeing's proxy statement, so this is what they send out to all shareholders in order to notify them that, one, we're going to have a meeting at X date. So here we can see that Boeing had their shareholder meeting on April 18, 2023. And, okay, yeah. And then two, they'll also also include the agenda, what's going to be talked about at the annual meeting. And then everything else in this report is basically the details of what you need to know in order to vote on such matters. So for Boeing, they have the election of 13 directors. It's on an annual basis. So some companies have what they call a classified board, which means that the directors are not up for election on an annual basis. Sometimes it's like every 2 or 3 years we'll vote for a director. In this case, and the best practice is to have an annual election of directors. And then by doing this allows shareholders who are not satisfied with the performance of the company to have a say in like, oh, I don't like this director, I'm gonna vote no. Does it actually kick the director off the board? You'll be surprised, but it actually doesn't. So even if a director doesn't get majority vote, they don't need to resign, which kind of boggles my mind. But current standard practices is that it's just a way for shareholders to express their dissatisfaction.
So how do you get someone removed? Does the board have to kick that person out?
Yeah.
The more definitive way to express dissatisfaction is to just sell your shares.
Or that, or you amend the bylaws or charter of a company and say you need to kick the director off if he doesn't get enough votes.
Right.
So some companies have that. in
Some
their
companies
charter.
actually have that practice, but
It's rare.
it's rare,
Oh.
which is surprising. 'Cause I thought that's what an election is for, but I guess not. Another thing that shareholders can make an input on is the executive compensation of their executives of the company.
But it's only advisory.
Only advisory, so it's non-binding, which means even if you express dissatisfaction again, it doesn't really do anything per se, but it shows the company, hey, like you're paying your executives too much, or we don't like how you're compensating them, so you need to do something about it. Advisory vote on the frequency. So standard practice right now is annual voting on executive compensation. Some companies have every 3 years shareholders can vote on executive compensation, but market practice is every year. Also, you can vote on incentive stock plan, so equity, how much equity is being used at the company. If the company uses all of its equity and they need more, they have to ask their shareholders to increase how much is in the pool.
To issue new stock.
To issue new stock. Yeah. And then finally, you'll see this every year, the ratification of the appointment of Deloitte, their auditor, as Boeing's independent auditors. So every company is required to have an external auditor. So usually you'll see one of the big 5 names here, Deloitte, KPMG,
Ernst and Young, I think.
Ernst and Young.
Yeah.
And they're required to hire an external auditor and make sure that their financial statements are correct and there's no fraud going on and that everything is accurate, because investors need to know what's actually happening at the company. And this actually happened, this wasn't required before, but ever since the Enron Scandal, where Enron kind of misled investors, the government passed a law that said, okay, you need to have an external auditor auditing your company. And finally, we have 4 shareholders who aren't satisfied with the performance of the company and they're proposing stuff. But really, there's actually, I think the minimum requirement is to hold $1,000 of stock of a company. I forgot what the exact regulation was, but the threshold itself isn't that bad.
Huh.
But it costs like money to actually, you gotta go through all the hoops and then draft the proposal, make sure you submit it on time, stuff like that. So it's a complex process.
That process is that from the regulators, or is it from the company that determines what the process is to bring things forward?
The table of contents, we can dive deeper into each of these, but that's essentially a proxy statement. Any questions? Okay, and finally, the fourth type of disclosure that a company is required to disclose is ownership disclosures. So here we can see all of the trading activities of executives and directors of the company. So for example, if we open one of these forms, we can see that the officer, Mr. Brian, I can't read his last name, but he,
Descending.
our CCO, he acquired some stock. Wait, did he?
Oh,
At the price of 0.
I'm gonna say that name. It's an interesting name.
Okay, restricted stock units that will vest and settle in shares, common stock. Yeah, so it looks like he acquired some securities, some stock. But anyways, yeah, this is required by law, and you can actually see all the trading activities of the directors of a company and executives. It makes me think that Nancy Pelosi and all the politicians should also. It is required.
It is.
Yeah.
It's delayed by at least a couple weeks.
Yeah. So this helps you determine whether or not the leaders of a company have stake in the company, and how much stake. In the Enron example, what ended up happening was that the CFO sold a ton of shares at one point in time, and looking back, you can kind of tell, oh yeah, why is he selling all these shares if he believes in the company? So it's like a red flag. It's like, oh, why are you doing that? But that is the fourth type of disclosure that companies are required to make. The SEC, very important website, has a lot of information. Another source of information that we can look at is the company's investor relationship website. Every company has this part of the website, but whenever you go on their website, you don't actually see it. So what you end up having to do is just to type it in Google. So for example, Boeing investor relations, and then you'll see that they actually have a whole web page, a website for investors. So, are you concerned if one of the directors or executives is on 10 other boards of other companies? Is that something that you would be concerned about? How are they managing their time like that? I don't know. So, sometimes people are concerned with that. And then also board policies. What kind of policies do they have in place to regulate themselves, right? So I know board of directors, they oversee management, but who oversees the board of directors? So what kind of policies do they have in place? So things to think about. Is the director independent? What that means is, are you concerned if the director is, for example, a family member of someone on the executive team? So for example, Tesla, Elon Musk's brother is a director. Are you concerned that he's on the board of directors? Is there a conflict of interest there?
No.
Hmm.
He knows what he's doing.
Is his brother like doing what's best for the company, or what's best for Elon Musk, his brother? So it's something to consider.
The same thing.
Has the company disclosed a CEO and key executive succession plan? So this is really important in the fact that, I don't know if you guys heard about Disney, but Disney, there's a lot of drama with the executives and board of directors, and now they're in a proxy contest.
What?
And what that means is that some of the shareholders of Disney are so dissatisfied with what's happening at Disney that they're nominating their own directors and saying that, like, I don't want this director that's currently on the board. I want my director to be on the board because I don't trust you guys and I don't trust how you guys are running the company.
Why do they not like? Is it culture war stuff? Do they not like that kind of thing, or what are they concerned about?
So recently the stock of Disney has gone down
Oh.
on for at least like 5 years. It's like kind of like going downhill. And then also the CEO, Bob Iger, he retired and then he came back.
Yeah.
And like people are like, no, like that's bad. Like, you can't just retire and then come back. Like there's supposed to be a succession plan in place. Like you can't beg the ex-CEO to come back because you're not doing well. So there's a lot of drama there, and some companies don't have a plan in place. And that's concerning if you're
Like Roy.
a S&P 500 company,
Yeah.
or if you're a Roy Kendall. Yeah. Is the CEO overboarded? So we've just talked about the commitments, time commitments of executives and directors.
Overboarded.
And then how many women are in board leadership? So if you value diversity, and diversity is something you consider, then you want to evaluate how many women are on the board. Are there people, is there ethnic diversity on the board, stuff like that? Questions?
Is there a minimum number of, like, board members required by anybody?
I think there is a minimum, but I don't know what the minimum is. I've seen like boards that are like 8
Okay.
people,
But
and
it's
then
usually
Boeing
not like
has
2.
13,
It's not
but
usually
it's not
just
usually
not like
2.
3 people.
Yeah, there should be a minimum.
Are there some boards that get really inflated? I mean, does the number of board members really matter, or is it just kind of like institutional inertia?
I think it does matter because if you have too many voices in the room,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard to decide stuff, but if you have too little, then it's not enough input.
What's the most you've seen?
Yeah.
13 is standard.
Like an odd number.
Isn't there like an unlucky number there?
Oh, I don't know about that. Okay, so let's take one of these questions. Do you guys have a question that you want answered about Boeing?
Do they have
Succession.
succession plan?
Okay, let's see if they have succession plan.
You look up like the what's the show based on? Is it the Murdoch Company?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Fox News.
Murdoch.
Alright.
Succession.
We're
Alright,
sticking
here,
with
let's
Boeing.
see.
Or their parent company.
Senior
Oh,
Management
what's it called?
Succession Planning. So the Governance and Public Policy Committee, their principal responsibilities include senior management succession planning, including recommending to the board nominees for CEO and other senior leadership. So it sounds like they do have this process in place and they're thinking about it. A committee's responsible for it, so that's good to see.
Wasn't there that news article where they were tapping someone who had been at the company for 3 generations? Or do you remember that? They're
Boeing?
yeah, they're tapping a woman.
Oh yeah.
Have you guys seen that statistic where like when companies are failing, they tend to put women into leader or CEO roles?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I saw someone said, I think the newest CEO of Boeing right now is a woman. Right?
Yeah, and it's usually a sign that they're going down because they
What?
put women into these positions and
Uh-huh.
they blame it.
Yeah, and then they like take
Yeah.
the brunt. There was a news article I saw.
Yeah, it's set up to fail.
Yeah.
That sucks.
But also, I feel like it's an opportunity if you're like really
Turn it
good,
around,
like
yeah.
turn it around and you get
Yeah.
credit. So it's like,
Yeah. I mean, it explains
Double
why they would like go for it when it's obviously a trap.
hmm.
It's like, oh, maybe there's a chance I Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, they're probably getting compensated really well and all that
That's
stuff,
true.
right? Like,
This is
Yeah.
very
they're
true.
crying with their millions if they don't.
Okay, and last, we have, second to last, we have compensation.
Oh, wait. On the previous point though, so
Yes.
are we able to see the names? Cause we know that that committee is responsible for such and such. Can we, is it in the? We can't see who's. Oh, is that
They just said that they were
Secret.
planning.
Yeah.
Oh, it's secret.
They
Oh.
felt it seemed a little.
Isn't that
vague.
bad though that it's secret? Cause it's like, oh, we thought it was this guy, but no, it's this guy.
No?
Isn't it better to have it? It's gonna be this guy. It's gonna be that guy.
No,
Oh, so it doesn't have to be disclosed.
it doesn't have to be disclosed.
it's
As
probably
long
too-
as we know there's a policy in place to do that.
Yeah, it's
Well,
probably
anyone
too
can have it.
political, right? If you like
Yeah.
have the successor already there, there's too much politics in the company and
but,
stuff.
like I
Is
be
it
a lobbyist.
though?
I'm a
Is it?
lobbyist, and I'll be like,
Oh.
it's time to lobby the successor. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
even
yeah.
focus on the.
Get in there,
CEO.
slide into their DMs, and be like, "Hey, did you see
Hey,
us?"
you wanna come vacation with us in the Bahamas?
Exactly. Hey.
That's true.
Yeah.
Cause in the military, it's very clear who's second and third in command. So if anything happens, then everyone knows who to look to. So
Right.
I don't know. That's interesting.
That's
Anyone can have a policy or whatever.
Exactly.
But yeah.
They want that maneuverability. I think they want that sort of.
So how do we know
We're
there's a
not sure
policy?
yet.
How do we know there's a policy?
We're not sure
Because they
yet.
said it, just trust me.
Oh, they did say it. They did say it though.
It must be true. It's on there.
My
Do they,
bad.
but do they actually show that they
It's on the
say
internet.
that they have a policy, but do they show the
The
policy?
Well, if they get audited, I'm sure
It
like
comes out.
yeah,
Oh.
it comes out. They
Isn't that
leave,
what
like,
you? Isn't that what
they
you guys
leave,
do?
like paper trails and stuff. If they get audited by the like federal government, they
Oh,
need to
okay.
show like okay, like
Oh.
you said you have a policy.
Mhm.
Where's all the meeting notes and stuff?
Mm.
It exists, but we
The
don't have
Fed,
access.
the feds and the regulators, they don't care about succession, do they? It's more
No.
like best practice.
That's
It's
fine.
It's a best practice. Okay.
Yeah, to avoid. It's in the company's best interest to avoid that kind of drama, right?
But we don't know if they're avoiding that kind of drama.
You
They don't
gotta
want it on
trust.
public, that's for sure.
Yeah.
They don't want it to be
You
like,
gotta
oh, we're
trust.
going with this guy, but then he
One
made
quick
a bad
question.
joke.
Yeah.
We're going with this
The-
guy.
Are there perks to being on the board? Like, do you usually get like extra stock and
Oh, yeah.
incentives and stuff?
Oh,
yes.
hey,
So
compensation.
actually, in the proxy statement, you can also see director compensation.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the times, directors have cash and equity, but it's more heavily weighted towards cash because you don't want to incentivize directors to work in the short-term interest of
True.
like trying to like increase stock price so they can get more value in their equity that they're holding. So usually it's so for example, we can see annual cash of 135,000.
That's it.
If you are a chair of a committee or of a board of a committee, you get extra money.
Remember, this is a part-time job.
Yes,
know,
it's a
right?
part-time
It's a
job.
It's extremely part-time.
Yes.
Yeah.
They also get restricted stock, so this is stock units.
No,
So here we can see a whole table of, okay.
uh,
So the highest paid director is 616,000, lowest paid is 207,000. And this is part-time, it's not
Yeah.
even full-time.
damn, 207, only 207?
Wow.
Some people, I mean, how
That's twice.
is he gonna make it?
How did you make it?
Somebody think of the director.
Okay, finally we have executive compensation. So we can think about it in terms of pay for performance. So if the company performance is doing really, really well, it makes sense that executives get paid a lot. But what happens if company performance is on the downhill, they're not doing well? We should expect to see that executive compensation also goes down. So decrease with performance. It should align with performance, right? So that's something to consider. We can consider the use of equity. So how is the company using all of the money that investors are giving to them? How much of it is being used in terms of paying executives and directors? We can also consider communications and disclosure. So the federal government requires companies to disclose certain information about how they're paying their executives, but there's a lot of leeway, and some companies don't really like disclosing their performance goals that they set for themselves and the targets, and so sometimes it's really hard to tell whether or not pay is aligned with performance, and you don't have those measurements that the company's setting from in the beginning of So, something to consider. Specifically, is CEO pay aligned with performance? How has the company used its equity? What's the ratio of CEO pay to the median of employee pay? What happens if there's a change in control? If the company gets acquired, what kind of severance payment does the executives get? So things to consider when we're talking about compensation. What do you guys want to know about them?
What is the multiple of the pay in the what's CIC?
Change in control.
Change in control or severance agreements for the CEO. How big is their golden parachute?
Yeah, parachute. And his salary.
How golden are we talking?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Big carrots.
Let's see. So here, this is required information, so you'll always see pay ratio under executive compensation. So median employee salary was $145,000, and then $22 million for CEO pay. So the ratio, where is it? 154 times that median employee. So is that good? Bad? I don't know.
What's the average for this type? Or do you know?
I don't know. But they're a big company. So.
Yeah.
I've seen like ridiculous amounts, like 200 times or 2,000 times. I'm like, 2,000? I don't know about that. Are you that valuable? 2,000 times
I remember watching a video like a while ago, like back in the 60s, 70s, or whatever. It used to be like 20 times was what you would expect from your average publicly owned company. 20 times median employee compensation went to the executive, but now it's really ballooned
Right.
over the decades.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't. I guess after this, I had a question about the golden parachute, but.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. What's your question?
Was there something else we had?
No, that's
Okay,
it.
okay.
154 times.
Yeah, because Will was bringing it up, and I was like, why is it in the best interest of like the company and the shareholders for the executive to have like a huge golden parachute of like
Yeah.
hundreds of millions?
So that's not best practice. Best practice is severance payment in terms of. So what usually happens? It depends on what type of termination it is.
Right.
Is it a change in control happens and you're terminated without cause, or you resign for a good reason? So if that's in that situation, most times companies will allow will pay the executive like 3 times base salary and annual bonus, plus they get to vest all of their equity. So that's like a huge amount already, but it's only in this case of certain situation. And why is it in the best interest? Because you don't want a company to, or you don't want an executive to incentivize an executive to kind of go looking for a acquisition or a change in control situation. You want to incentivize them so that, okay, only if you get fired and also if there's an acquisition, then you get severance payment. Also, there's like non-disclosure requirements when you sign.
Oh, if you want the golden
If you
parachute,
want the
you have to maybe sign
gotta be like
non-disclosure
zip
or
it up.
non-compete. Do non-compete?
Non-compete,
Does that happen
non-disclosure,
still?
that happens.
Oh, okay.
In certain other situations, and there should be a table. Severance. Potential payments upon termination. Yep, so there's different scenarios, so like retirement, death and disability, termination without cause, but not a change in control. So there's different situations that result in different types of severance payments, but the biggest package is usually what happens when there's a change in control and it's a termination.
Change in control means like when someone acquires your company, or
Yeah, if there's an acquisition or a merger,
Or a vote of no confidence
yeah.
or something like that.
Or if ownership of the company changes, yeah, I guess that's acquisition.
That's
Yeah.
interesting that like each person has a different setup of benefits and different numbers and stuff. Like it's not.
Usually it's a standard. This
Okay.
is calculated based on their salary and whatever.
Oh.
But the actual severance agreement, it's either like 2.99 times base salary and annual bonus, or 1.5 times, or 1 time. So
Right, and that
there's
applies to
a
everybody.
specific,
Okay, they just like laid out the math.
yeah, but they lay out the
Okay.
math. Yeah.
Interesting. Cool.
Okay, the last category, shareholder rights. So this is talking about what rights do you have as a shareholder. For example, if you own 1 share, does that count as 1 vote? Some companies have what they call a multi-class stocks. So there's like A stock, 1 share counts as 10 votes, and B stock, 1 share counts for 1 vote. So that's unequal voting structure. Some companies have it. Usually they do that because they want to incentivize like the executives. They usually have the more powerful voting. So that's something to consider. Meeting and voting related issues. How hard is it to change the bylaws? If a shareholder wants to amend bylaws or the charter, how hard is it? Do they have to get 50% majority or super majority, 66%? And finally, litigation rights. If the company goes into a lawsuit, or if someone tries to sue, if a shareholder tries to sue the company, what happens in terms of fees? Like who pays the fees if they lose or win? Things to consider. So this one we talked about, so what's the power of your share? Are directors elected annually? Does the company require supermajority to approve amendments to the charter or bylaw? Does the company have a fee shifting provision? So that's the litigation part. Anything of interest in terms of voting?
Do they do a 1 vote? Yeah, do they have an unequal voting structure? How do you look that up?
A good question. So it usually says at the beginning. Something voting. Usually it says like over here, as of date, there's approximately 599 million common stock outstanding. 599 were eligible to vote. Yeah, it'll like say in this section like, oh, there's like 8 Carmen Class A stocks outstanding, how many? Class B stocks outstanding, how many? And then you can tell. But in this case, I think they have 1 class of stocks.
Okay.
What is a registered shareholder?
Where?
There's 87,000 registered shareholders. This is the last sentence of
this
that.
one?
Yeah. Like that's like a process you can go through to register your shares, right?
This is beneficial shareholders is, like you own 1 share of Boeing, but you own it through the S&P 500 index or Vanguard index. So you're a beneficial shareholder.
Okay.
And then I'm not really sure ABCS.
Okay.
I'll have to look it up.
That was something with like the whole GameStop
Yeah.
phase. I don't want to get into, but like the GameStop committee was like, oh, you guys need to register your shares so that these other companies can't
Vote for you.
vote for you or like can't I forget the terms, but they can't like borrow your shares to whatever. I forget the phrase, but yeah, I'm wondering if they have like extra rights or stuff by being registered.
I don't know.
Yeah, no worries.
I don't know. I will look it up. Alright. So that was the ABCs of corporate governance. I didn't give you every single factor that you can evaluate, but I think it's a good start to knowing more about corporate governance. I had an activity in mind, but I also want to Like, we could work on this, like, split off into groups and work on, like, comparing Airbnb and Booking Holdings. Booking Holdings, by the way, it's another public company. They own OpenTable, Kayak. So we could do this exercise, but I do know I've been running this presentation's actually quite long. So that's an option. But okay, yeah, I'll just stop there. Do you guys want to do this, or are you guys good?
I have a bunch of questions.
Okay, then we can do like Q&A.
Open discussion.
So your company, can you describe what your company does? Your role in this?
So my company is ISS Corporate, and we're a subsidiary of ISS. And what ISS does stands for Institutional Shareholder Services.
That's what I said.
Or solutions, something like that. They are a proxy advisory company. And basically what they do, they work with institutional investors, so Vanguard, State Street, BlackRock, all the investors, and they say, hey, we have all this data on all the public companies, and this is how we evaluate them in terms of corporate governance. Are they super risky? Do they have good corporate governance? Do they have bad corporate governance? We can give this to you if you pay us. So that's the incentive behind institutional investors working with the parent company.
Is ISS like, what's the business model? Is it just like a knowledge broker?
Yeah, it's a data company.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And they provide recommendations to those institutional.
Yeah, yes. Oh yeah, that's, yes. So what they do is they'll publish a report, and they'll say, okay, based on our analysis, this is how you should vote on the ballot items on that proxy statement. And so they have different policies in place. So people who are more, there's like ESG, so more like a environmentally friendly policy. They have one policy for that. And if you want to vote in terms of anti-ESG, so if you don't care about the environment or the climate and you just want to vote based on company performance and stuff, there's a policy for that. If you are religious and you're more like Christian orientated, there's also a policy for that.
Whoa.
So different policies for how you want to vote.
Who are the religious clients? Like churches that invest?
Yes,
That's cool. So of the so institutional investors, what are like the smallest institutional investor that you guys would service? Like a church or something? Like
I don't know,
okay.
but I know CalSTRS or like
Right.
unions. I feel like government pensions too.
Yeah.
Like they probably use ISS to evaluate companies, who to invest in. My side of the subsidiary ISS Corporate, we work with corporate, so businesses, public companies. So we work with public companies and we offer our services to them. So if they know they have bad corporate governance and they want to improve their corporate governance, then we say, we can help you improve your corporate governance. Here's all the weaknesses. Ownership. Principal shareholders. So we can see the top.
Of course, Vanguard.
Yeah, so Vanguard, they own 7.7% of bonus shares.
Oh, that's it.
Newport Trust Company, they own 7.4. BlackRock owns 5.6.
Oh,
So you can see top shareholders in the report.
gotcha.
Cool.
There's-
They have a lot
BlackRock,
of
like-
power.
What about
BlackRock, they own like all of America pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they basically have shares in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I was reading some time ago about concerns about these institutional shareholders and you know having too much power over over what like how companies are ran.
Yes.
Are you seeing that? Like, is it concerning? Right? Look, so these guys have 8%. That's not that much, right?
It's
It's
a
a
lot.
lot. Okay.
Yeah.
So like, if there was like 100 people at the shareholder meeting, they would have 8 seats. Is that how you would?
Yeah,
or
but
no,
not
we'll have
everyone
more.
votes.
Right. Okay.
There's a lot of abstentions, and so
So you would think they'd have like a third of the room, or
yeah,
okay.
it's like a bigger portion than what you think it is.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So what can they do with that power? What's the worst case scenario?
Worst case scenario.
I could prioritize short-term profits over long-term sustainability, that kind of thing.
Environment stuff, maybe
Yeah.
they're like.
Yeah, like
We could look at shareholder proposals to see
yeah.
what
What's,
kind
like,
of
yeah.
what's BlackRock proposing?
Like, have they proposed anything spicy or anything? You know what I mean? Like,
usually it's more, it's like other, so for example, here, shareholder proposals, items 6 through 9. So Boeing received 4. 2 of them are reporting on lobbying activities, so like political expenditures, climate lobbying.
so the shareholders are asking them to disclose. That stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Like, what are your policies regarding your political
Who's
activities?
asking?
What's the China?
Who is asking? So here we see the province of St. Joseph.
Oh, not those guys.
and the Kakashi Order. So,
Rabble rousers.
there's like BlackRock, and then there's provinces.
so you don't actually really see like Vanguard or BlackRock doing
Right.
shareholder proposals. You'll see like these
Smaller.
smaller shareholders.
Yeah.
Right.
But it does affect how the companies run if they get
Huh.
enough votes.
Interesting.
Cool.
What is your take on the trend of increasing private equity, sort of reducing the number of and influence of public companies? You know what I mean? Like private equity has been sort of taking publicly owned corporations and then taking a controlling share of those corporations and then turning them private so that they don't have to do these disclosures at all.
Yeah. So
What is
that's
your
a
take on that?
benefit of, like, if you're a public company, the benefit is you get a lot of investments, like you get a lot of money. But then the downside is you also have to follow all the rules and regulations, right? You gotta disclose a lot. If you're a private company, privately owned, like, you don't really have to disclose as much as these public companies. So you get to operate more in secrecy, and I don't think that's really good because you don't know what's happening. But I assume they don't get as much money.
I don't know.
I don't know.
What's the
I don't know.
the size of these? Like, what's the biggest private company right now that I would know? You know what I mean? Cause because you wouldn't be.
Didn't Twitter go private?
Oh, it is, huh? Oh yeah.
Stripe as well, right? I think Stripe's
Right.
private.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, companies that like 10 years ago you would have expected them to continue to be publicly owned because they are of that size, have gone private.
I'm just trying to get a scope of like
Wow.
how big is the private company space? Because I don't know. Everybody wants to go public to get paid out. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I read one article in the Atlantic that was like, hey, watch out because this is a thing that is occurring because it used to be the only way to grow to a certain size was to trade shares of your company on a stock exchange. That was the only way to grow to a certain scale. But now it seems like there are other ways to circumvent those caps on your growth without having to go the public route. But yeah, and there's just like it's like a lot of backroom stuff.
I'd like to read that article. Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know enough about it.
Any more questions?
I have a lot of questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I would ask her. Yeah.
Oh, I have no questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Good thing you live with her. So.
Yeah. I still don't know what she does, but yeah.
Okay, well, our next event is in April. Mahjong 101 with Sabrina. She's going to teach us how to play Mahjong and the rules. I know how to play, but I don't know the rules and like counting points and stuff, so I am looking forward to it. Put it on your calendar, April 27th, 11 a.m. at her house.
All right.
And we're also looking for Mahjong tables and Mahjong sets, so if you have any, let me know.
It's gonna be like a illegal gambling game.
Yeah.
Like literally.
We'll gamble with tokens. We'll have a separate
$5
place.
buy-in.
The Monopoly money.
Yeah.
You gotta put like sound dampeners on the walls.
That's what a casino is.
No, I'm imagining like the Japanese pachinko parlors, like the parlor itself where you play the game, you cannot exchange money. But there just so happens to be another business right around the corner where you can exchange money for silver balls. You can only use those silver balls at the pachinko parlor. So technically
It's
it's
a
not
loophole.
gambling. That's how they exist.
Okay, let's get a round of applause. Everybody.